that other part of your brain is working other than your mom brain, right? So we would have whatever, half an hour, like, let's talk about this for a half an hour. And then we were able to just kind of have this mind meld and meet and talk about it. And then as our team kind of grew, we would have more people that we could have these conversations with or reach out to. And the ability of like, okay, I got to wrap it up or postpone future conversations for later. But it was so fulfilling and so satisfying. You kind of get addicted to it after a while.
Welcome to the podcast where motherhood meets reinvention. I'm your host, Sharon Macey, and this is Mom to More. I'll be speaking with remarkable moms who have embraced the art of transformation, crafting their more by leveraging the skills they hone as stay-at-home moms. They'll share their experiences, struggles, and successes as they return to a former career, pursued a passion or hobby, or charted an entirely new path, giving you the clarity, motivation, and inspiration to help you answer the question, what do you want to do when your kids grow up? Welcome back to a new episode of Mom to More. Okay, my guest today has a really compelling stay-at-home mom and reinvention story that I know is really going to resonate with you. Cristan Crocker is an American documentary filmmaker and producer celebrated for her insightful explorations of identity, culture, and social change. She co-founded Rare Bird Films in 2008 alongside Andrea Blaugrund-Nevins, initiating the venture with the acclaimed documentary, The Other F Word, which delves into the lives of punk rock musicians transitioning into fatherhood. Now that is an image in my head. Building on this success, Cristan co-produced Tiny Shoulders, Rethinking Barbie, a Hulu original that premiered at the 2018 Tribeca Film Festival. The film offers a critical examination of Barbie's evolution and its reflection of shifting feminist ideals in America. Prior to her producing career, Crocker worked as an actress with roles in television series such as Matlock and Doogie Howser MD, as well as over 75 national commercials. So she's been out there. Originally from San Clemente, California, she is a mother of 3 and has spoken about her personal journey, including her stay-at-home mom years and personal reinvention, how that has deeply influenced her storytelling approach. Cristan is committed to telling stories that foster empathy and provide nuanced perspectives on underrepresented experiences, and that feels oh so mom to me. Welcome to the show, Cristan. I cannot wait to dive into our conversation today.
Thank you very much. It's so good to be here.
Thank
I
you.
love what you're doing. Thank you for doing this.
Oh, thank you. Well, I'm so glad to showcase your unique journey because I think it's really important for moms to hear who are going through this process. I'm going to start with what I call my essential mom question. We know you have 3 kids. Where did you raise them?
We grew up, the boys were raised in Pacific Palisades, basically Los Angeles.
Gotcha. And so your decision to stay home with your boys, was it intentional or was it something you fell into?
It was both, but it was a little of both. It was definitely intentional, but I did have twins first. So the decision is really made for you.
That is so true.
Yes, exactly. And, as I'm sure every mom tells you, I wouldn't change it for the world. It was exhausting, but it was also a huge learning curve and really changed who I am as a person.
I want to delve into that for a second because I really like what you said. Talk a little about how it changed you forever as a person, as a woman.
Well, I think initially when you realize your body is no longer just about you, right? At the very beginning of all of that. And I did have some complications. So all of a sudden I had always been incredibly active and all this stuff. And all of a sudden I couldn't be. I was put on bed rest. I had to really cut back. And then it was when the twins were born, they were in the NICU. I was in the NICU. Wow. I had preeclampsia. It was scary. Yeah. So yeah. And I remember when the doctor came in and he said, our priority is to save the mom. And I was like, what? But the babies. But I mean, now I get it. But it was just this whole different for me, it was like, no, no, take me, save the babies,
Yeah.
as we then do for the rest of our lives. So there were these huge, kind of paradigm shifts that happened where you
Yeah.
were no longer in your own mind the priority. Um,
Right.
so
That
there was
just
a lot of
started a lifetime of putting others before ourselves.
100%. And then both
Yeah.
babies were in the NICU. And that's a whole other, experience to
Yeah.
where, when I went home without my babies.
Oh,
Uh,
that's hard.
yeah,
Oh
yeah,
my gosh.
yeah.
Yeah.
And then you just kind of realize like, and since this is about moms, which I love, I can talk about this kind of stuff,
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
and
Because you're not the only one who's experienced this either.
exactly.
Yeah.
And we can all relate to how painful that would be. And it just really is. And you don't even feel like a whole person anymore until,
Right.
then I got my babies back one at a time and, they're all fine and great and everything now. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's a very different mindset.
That's true. That's true.
Hmm.
And you're right. Suddenly it's not about you anymore. It's about them.
100%.
And yeah. And I
Yeah.
think women have a really unique ability to do that. You almost
Yes,
go outside of
they
yourself. We
do.
do. Yeah. Yeah.
And you
Right.
know what? It doesn't always jive with what everybody else wants, but like that, yeah,
Yeah.
it definitely does. Absolutely.
That's so true. So true.
Mhm.
Okay, so I'm going to jump back to you were a full-time mom to
Yeah.
3 boys,
Mhm.
and you were also producing films, right?
Yes, I said, Andrea and I started, maybe it was 2008. So I had 2 10-year-olds and I had a 4-year-old. And
So
then
you did all those mom years and
yeah,
then
yes,
transition
yes,
to, into producing. You're
yes.
right.
And Andrea at that point had all 3 of her kids. So she had an 8-year-old, 5-year-old, and a 2-year-old. So we
Oh my
we were
gosh.
all kind of, yeah, we were in the same wheelhouse. And we decided very early on, look, we have 6 kids between us. We are not going to be the ones that tell the story of how to die in Oregon. Like there's plenty of people, but that came out the same year as the other F word. And there's
Right.
plenty of people who are brilliant storytellers that can tell that intense of a story. That was not going to be for us because we knew we would work. Both of our husbands were big career, executives in the entertainment industry. And we knew that we would do drop off and then we would work from 9 to 3 every day. And we did that for the first year and a half. So much so that when I showed my rough cut to my, at the time, husband in December, before we were about to get into South by our first film festival, he turned and he was stunned. He was like, you guys have a real film here. And I was like, I know. We've been working from 9 to 3, haven't missed a beat
Right.
for 18 months.
Oh, ye of little faith, right? That he was so
Exactly.
surprised.
Yeah, it was kinda like, "Oh, yeah, they're doing
Yeah.
this little project," and then he was like, "Wait, hang on," and then so we were feeling very smug about that.
Absolutely, as you
Yeah.
should be. I also love the fact that you collaborated. And I think that's really important for women to realize you don't have to go this alone, right? You can collaborate with someone who is like minded with you. And then there's that power of 2 brains, and you both have the same priorities, which is the family first. And we've got this, this very compact window of time where we have to get everything done. And you do.
It wouldn't have worked for either of us any other way, and it
Right.
was this perfect moment in time and, really supporting one another and really had the exact same priorities like you're talking about, which was such a beautiful thing about our partnership.
That is so nice. So out
Mhm.
of curiosity, what did your creative life look like between 9 and 3?
We would initially, there was, okay, I fibbed a little bit because initially, like when we were collecting footage, there were
Sure.
times early on where we would pop out. We'd have to go to like, punk shows and we'd have to go to the whiskey or we'd have to go here or we'd have to go there. So that
Right.
was not happening between 9 and 3, but we were
Right.
able to finesse it in a way. So I would say, really importantly, like post production,
Hmm.
but also early development meetings. So we would meet early on, we would meet at someone's house. And then we would have those meetings,
Mhm.
and then we would go out and we would shoot. But a lot of times, even shooting, because don't forget, we were shooting with new dads too. So they also had nap schedules, and they had, drop off and pick up and things like that. I mean, when
I
we really,
love that. I love
I
that.
know, I know,
Yeah.
it was, yeah. And so, when we weren't traveling to shoot, it was, it would literally be like, okay, here we go. And at 2:45, see you later, bye. And frankly, we're doing what we're doing. And because it was us, and then we brought in our DP slash editor slash assistant slash
Mhm.
everything. He was fantastic right out of film school, Jeff. But sometimes we'd take calls from the kids or
Mhm.
schools, or have to do emails or deal with some carpool issues or
Right.
scheduling. It was,
Life.
yeah, what is that famous statement? If you want to get something done, have a busy
Ask a
mom
mom.
do it. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, you develop so many different, the
Yeah.
ability to be doing, 5 different things at once.
Yeah. Oh, I love that story. I love that part of your story.
Thank you.
So when we first spoke, Cristan, you had a really interesting take on the role of a stay-at-home mom and the challenges of balancing motherhood with your professional pursuits. So, how do you stay creatively lit up during those years when it's like all hands on deck? How do you keep those creative juices flowing? Like, I remember wanting to return to my writing, but my creative gene was like exhausted.
That's a really good question. I mean, again, I will point to the beauty of the partnership I had with Andrea. We would talk between 5 and 8 times a day, if we weren't together. So, and that was, gosh, I mean, it's so fulfilling to have something too where that other part of your brain is
Yes.
working other than your mom brain, right? So we would have, whatever, half an hour, like, let's talk about this for a half an hour. And then we were able to just kind of have this mind meld and meet and talk about it. And then as our team kind of grew, we would have more people that we could have these conversations with or reach out to. But again, I wouldn't say I had like a sand timer on my desk, but you
Hmm.
definitely have in your mind, okay, I've got like 20 minutes right now where I can talk about
Right.
this. And the ability of like, okay, I got to wrap it up or postpone future conversations for later and things like that. But it was so fulfilling and so satisfying. You kind of get addicted to it after a while. Like the mom only dimensional life, I was like, oh no, no. And then once you turn it on, I don't know if you found this, it's like, oh,
Mhm.
I could tell that story. Or you read
Right.
something, or you're, watching TV, or you come across something and you're like, oh, I wonder what's happening with that. And is anybody making a documentary on that? And
Right. The other thing I wanted to point out was when you were just talking about like mom brain, I realized that while you are raising kids, your mom brain is going in a million different directions and you are accumulating an incredible skill set of things that you then take into your next chapter of life. So I'm just curious, let's talk about some of the skills that you fine-tuned, honed, and how that transferred into producing, because I'm sure there are many.
well, don't they kind of seem like the same,
They really are
right?
one and the same. Yeah.
They are. I mean, you
Yeah.
produce a human, and then,
Mhm.
you make sure that human like thrives, stays alive and thrives. And,
Mhm.
you do your best to put that human into the world, and everything that entails. And so I would say, back to the earlier thing about, putting yourself, no longer putting yourself first and realizing that there's others.
Mhm.
That is like an early original shift where you're like, oh no, this is what's best for the project. So then you start being able to kind of get that macro view of things. And that's one step. And then just basic organizational skills for
Yeah.
sure. As far as scheduling time, um, and it becomes in a really, satisfying way, like non-negotiable. Like,
Right.
this is when we're doing this. This is when we, as far as like your own structure. Now, things obviously change, as you know, whenever you're trying to create content. But, it's really nice to be able to set it up and plan it and then execute it.
Right.
And with the kids and logistics, listening, listening was another skill that you
That's a
really,
big one.
right? I
Yeah, it's
mean,
a
I
big one.
don't know that I listened as much. And then you're like, oh, I have to listen to my kids. And then you're like, oh, and I'm going to listen to these adults as they're speaking.
Right.
You just start listening more, I think,
I
too.
think listening and really hearing,
And
right?
hearing.
Because sometimes you can listen and blow it off.
Yeah.
And I think that's such a mom skill because we have to, you're not only listening and you're hearing, but you're
Mhm.
also listening and you're seeing and you're feeling the subtext.
Yes.
And especially if you're, face to face.
Yes. And troubleshooting
Mm-hmm.
and, being nimble. And like, okay,
Yeah.
that's not working. Let's try something else. You know how with the
Right.
kid, especially when they're little, like,
Oh, yeah.
hey, and they're screaming or yelling, and you're like, oh, okay, and they're in the
Yeah.
market. You're in the market, and like, okay, that's not working. What other things can do? Or
Yeah.
even like if they're sick, right? Think of like
Mm-hmm.
the panic. Oh, the acetaminophen isn't working, or like they're still throwing up, and also using your resources. That's a big
Right.
thing too, right? I mean, I had to because I had two babies at once. It was all hands on
Yeah.
deck 24/7. And it was like, okay, I need this, I need that, like getting your team together. That's
Mm-hmm.
another skill that I learned how to do. And
Yeah.
that is one that I've just continued to take through my life in anything I do. And the ability to be like, because we would always call ourselves a tiny team because there was only three of us initially, and then we grew to four people. But we were nimble, we were, economical, and you would definitely have to come up with different solutions all the time.
Right. Right. It's also a very mom trait to be able to just pivot on a dime.
Mhm.
And I have spoken with so many women, and many of them say that their husbands or spouses, your partners, just can't do that.
Mhm.
They'll think you're doing X, and then all of a sudden you say to them, nope, we're doing Y because whatever happened, and we can't do that. We have to do this. And the woman just goes to the floor, and the guy's like, oh, wait a minute. So,
Alive.
yeah.
Well, and if you think about it too, biologically, that we are made to adapt and change, right?
Hey,
Yes.
Cristan, we are going to take a short break. And when we return, we are going to talk about Barbie. Yeah, that Barbie. And now a quick word from my sponsor, Ally Shoes. I got to tell you, these are some of the most comfortable shoes I have ever worn. They're designed by women, for women, like finally, right? And engineered with perfectly placed padding so I can literally wear these all day. And I cannot say that for other brands I've worn. And I'm not the only one giving positive reviews. InStyle, Business Insider, and CNN are all saying the same thing. Oh, and they have a really cool origin story as well. So flats, heels, boots, you name it, they have it. Ally is letting me share the love with all of you. Head on over to Ally, that's ALLY.NYC, where new customers and listeners of the pod will get $40 off your first pair of heels. All their heels, like Classic, Kitten, Bold Block, Sexy Slingbacks, with special code MOMTOMORE40, and 10% off your first pair of boots and flats, so 10% off of each, with special code MOMTOMORE10. Ally is reimagining how comfort and function support women every day, and I love that. Thanks to Ally for sponsoring this episode. Okay, excited to talk about this. Barbie. So you, interestingly, are all about Barbie in so many unique and intertwined ways. So let's talk about those.
Barbie came into my life in my later years because, of course, I had one growing up.
We all did, yeah.
Yeah. um, my producing partner Andrea had a very good friend that worked at Mattel and was having dinner with her one night. And like I mentioned earlier, sometimes these things just organically come up. And the friend was talking about how passionate everyone is at Mattel about what they do and how much they love it. And Andrea was like, that sounds like it's a documentary that needs to be made. So that's how the seed started or germinated. And then it was 9 months of legal wrangling before we could finally take a camera into Mattel,
Wow.
into the creative center in El Segundo. And then we filmed for 6 or 7 months. We got very fortunate and got,
Amazing access.
yeah. And I
Yeah.
mean, it was incredible. No one had ever had access like that before. And it was really cool. And then we filmed the process of them changing the body types for the first time and the
Hmm.
ultimate reveal of the curvy body, the shorter body, the tall body. And so that was kind of our Barbie storyline. But woven into that, we really were telling the story of the history of feminism and how
Mm-hmm.
Barbie has and has not at times reflected that course for women.
Yep.
For me, one of the most fascinating realizations, which I didn't realize consciously, but clearly it's why I love to play with the doll, is that, you know, Ruth created the doll as something for her daughter Barbara that was other than a baby, because until that point, the only
You're
doll that you
right.
had was
Baby
a
dolls.
baby that you could
Yeah.
take care of.
Hmm.
And Ruth was like, No, I want something that my daughter can project herself onto that's like a career that is going out in the world. So Barbie was on the moon before Neil Armstrong. There was a Barbie, Dr. Barbie, before
Right.
women were allowed to be doctors. There, so she was so far ahead of everything.
Hmm.
And I just loved that. And I think Greta ended up using it in the movie to great effect in the Barbie movie, where she shows at the very beginning the little girls playing with the Barbie dolls and then they
Right.
take it and smash it down, and I was like, yeah, that's, it was a really fun way to
That came from you guys.
it came from
Yeah.
us. Yeah.
So Tiny Shoulders really dives into reinvention, Barbie's, and then by extension, ours, society's. So did working on Tiny Shoulders help you reflect on your own reinvention journey beyond motherhood? And if so,
That's a really good question. What it did actually is I loved the focus on the history of feminism. And I loved it was, I guess, not a reinvention, but more like an affirmation as a woman and how far we have come
yeah,
and how far we still need to go, and how some of the battles. I mean, we were also filming this believing that Hillary Clinton was going to be the next president. So it was really fascinating. There was this whole momentum. And so I love doing the deep dive into the history of women
mhm,
and really understanding that, because I never was a feminist major. So I really loved that. And it was very empowering for me to kind of understand the context, really, of how much
yeah,
more there needs to be done for women. And
right,
talking to people like Gloria Steinem, Roxane Gay, I mean, fascinating facts, fascinating women with so many important things to say.
right,
Um, so I guess it was just more of my evolution as far as learning from these pockets of, the world. I mean, kind of the whole purpose. I mean, the greatest fulfillment of doing documentaries is how much I personally learned from each of these, subsets or subcultures of people. I mean, women aren't a subculture, but like the
yeah,
hardcore feminist and different things like that, and how that really enlightened me.
yeah. I mean, what a wonderful learning and growing experience for you
Yeah.
while you were also, filming this and ultimately enlightening the world through that documentary. I'm also curious from a producer perspective, how did motherhood shape your storytelling lens? Like, did it shift the kind of stories that you felt drawn to?
Well, one point I will make too for me is,
Mm.
don't forget, I have 3 boys.
That's
So
true. Yeah.
there were no Barbies in my house. And I think as a mother, as a parent, most of us realize that our most
Yeah.
important part of our job in that area, in that role, is to raise good humans.
Yes.
And I felt like, if you look at the chronology of it, I'm to show my kids the football players and then, their vulnerabilities and their struggles. And then also to show them a side of the world that for sure they would never have It would have been like Barbie, ooh, but we were at the premiere together and it really opened their eyes to things. And I think that's one of the things that I'm most proud of as well, is that it helps my own kids to kind of, they're going to watch it because their mom made it.
Right.
Um, Whereas otherwise, and by the way, they all watch documentaries now. And I love that. And I love
Yeah.
that they pursue stories of real people, and they want to learn more about humans. And so it's kind of, I wouldn't say a specific story is influenced by being a mother, but just more the actual reporting and talking about real people and
Right.
showing them that.
Right.
I mean, because
So
we can get
interesting.
very siloed in our lives, right? And
Yeah.
especially
Yeah.
like with social media and the algorithms and things like that. So I'm always trying to send, or did, and they're older now, but there's certain things that they watch, they're like, wow, that was fantastic. And so that was another part of it. And Andrea has
Yeah.
a daughter and two sons. So there was only one girl in all six kids. So it was fun for us to bring, and Barbie was everywhere. We had dolls everywhere. It was pink. It was all these things. So it was fun.
But in some ways, what you did was you opened up. I'm not sure if saying the feminine side is the right way to phrase it, but you opened up a side, a part of all these young men, these boys and young men, to understand women in a more organic way than maybe they would have before. So I think you really did them a service to have them understand just a broader perspective of the world.
Thank you. Exactly. You articulated it much better than I did. No, but that's exactly it. I mean,
Right.
even, when they're younger, like a punk rocker,
Yeah.
what I love about that story is that these are guys that you would cross the street to avoid. But once you get to know them, you see that the outside, they were like, we used to say they were like porcupines, they have these spiky
Yeah.
outer sides to kind of keep everybody away. There's a reason they all got into punk rock, and it was usually a very difficult childhood.
Mm.
And once you get past all the spiky, stay away stuff, it's just these soft little sweet poets underneath.
Yeah.
And, you know, usually really intelligent. And that was a great thing to teach the kids too, like not be afraid, not be, try to
Well,
see what's inside of people.
exactly. Don't judge them by their cover. Absolutely. So
Mhm.
since we've been talking about Barbie, um, aside from Barbie, who is the queen, which of Mattel's other Barbie adjacent characters were your favorite?
Oh, that's a good one. I remember it was so cool. We got to go into the archives, and their archives were just an old warehouse, honestly. I mean, I'm
Wow.
hopeful that if they see this, that they had all these great plans to like do historical,
Right.
basically put a museum in there. But when we were there, they just opened this old metal, cabinet that had been closed. I mean, the smell of plastic, and we were just like, whoa. I mean, it was hot. And anyway, it was really funny, but every single doll was there.
Oh my
So
gosh.
everything. I mean, all the originals, which was really fascinating. I mean, you got to love Ken.
Yeah.
And this was before the movie. And frankly, I thought Ken was brilliant in the movie, loved him.
Oh, oh, he was
And I just
hysterical.
loved
Yeah.
it. And so I have to say Ken. And when you break down what Ken has been through and all his
Mhm.
different looks, I would have to say Ken. Yeah.
Thank you for that. I love that. Okay, so Cristan, since you have been there and done that, what reinvention advice do you have for moms who are wondering right now what their next chapter might be?
I would say listen to your gut as a mom and just try.
Yeah.
Just take that step. Don't be afraid to fail.
Right.
And just
Exactly.
take the failures where you learn, frankly. And if you have people that you see eye to eye with, or there's that mom in the carpool line that you guys always laugh at the same joke, or if you find you have a similar energy, again, I love having a partner and working with a team. I would say take it a extra step, kind of see if there's a spark that you two could share, kind of
Right,
like
like a collaboration.
that you
Exactly.
can collaborate on.
Yeah, yeah.
Whatever it
That's
is, brownies for the bake sale, or, go try and make those brownies together and see how they turn out. You never know.
you could start
Like the next
a
Susie
food
cake.
company. Exactly. There you
Exactly.
go.
Yeah.
I've heard and I've interviewed people who've done just that.
Right? Yeah.
Cookies, not
Yeah.
brownies. Okay, so talk to me about new projects on the horizon. What do you have going on now?
Well, really, my passion, and this came out of the Barbie documentary, is telling the story of Ruth Handler, the woman that created Mattel and created Barbie. And she built Mattel with her husband, Elliot. And we got the life rights. And it was after every screening of Tiny Shoulders. One of the first 2 or 3 questions was always, well, what about Ruth? And I remember thinking, how do people not know her story? She is unofficially the first female CEO of a Fortune 500 company, even though Kay Graham gets the credit, because, well, Ruth never would take a title higher than Elliot. So she always stayed SVP. She was all about building the business. It was less about her own title and all this.
But
But
Barbie was her baby.
Barbie was her baby.
That's her
Mattel was her
baby.
baby. Her husband was
Yeah.
really the dreamer and the creator.
Interesting.
But she was the businesswoman. And talk about reinvention. I mean, her
Yeah.
story, after she got kicked out of Mattel, there was issues with the SEC, and she took the fall and she left the company. That was a whole thing. And then back in those days, if you did a mammogram, or if they found a lump, instead of biopsying it, what they would do is they would remove your entire breast.
Yeah. Good.
So you had to sign before you went under, that you would allow them to do that. So she went under and woke up, and after 5 times of waking up intact, woke up the 6th time with one of her breasts missing. And the way that it was removed ended up causing her pain for the rest of her life. I know. But she created a second company called Nearly Me that is still in business. And it is the first breast prostheses for women
Oh,
that cannot afford. And back in those days, it wasn't really even an option, but for the women
right.
that cannot afford reconstructive surgery. So that was
Oh,
her passion in life. And she hired all women at her company it was called Nearly Me. And she ended up calling the company Ruthton, because Mattel, that was Harold Matson and Elliot. And we have that in the documentary where Elliot was like, we tried to fit in Ruth, but Rumat, like it didn't work. So it was called Mattel. Like,
okay.
really? So she named her next company Ruthton, to make sure her name was in that company. And she would travel around. She'd get in the car with her granddaughter, Cheryl, who we love. We're the first
Yeah.
people to ever make a deal with the family for Ruth's life rights. And it's with Barbara, her daughter, and Cheryl, her granddaughter. We love working with them. I've partnered with Rita Wilson on it. And she would drive Cheryl around. They'd drive around the country and and Ruth was like in her 60s at the time, go into dressing rooms with big cartons, and she would fit all the women individually. That became her life's passion.
Oh, I love
And
that.
yeah, I
Always a
mean,
champion of women. I love that.
always, always, and so far ahead of herself. And that became, and there's a clip at the end of the documentary where she's talking to Merv Griffin, and she's like, yeah, you want to see, and he's like, no, but he's like feeling him. And he's like, can you imagine if people are tuning in right now, and she's like, I'm wearing them right now. I mean, she was such a pistol. She was such a character. There was no one like her. So we are developing that movie right now, which
Oh, I
we're
can't wait to see that when it
so
comes out.
excited about. Thank
Yeah,
you.
that's
She's an
super
incredible
exciting.
woman, and everybody needs to know her story.
Oh, that's going to be fabulous, Cristan. Thank you for
Thank
sharing
you.
that. Okay, unfortunately, our time is coming to a close. So I have a question that I ask all of my amazing moms that I have the privilege of interviewing. And that is, since this is the Mom to More podcast, Cristan Crocker, what is your more?
That is such a good question. And the fact that you put that out there really made me think about it too. So thank you. I don't know specifically, but I'm really kind of leaning towards local news. I'm in a small town right now, and the importance of local news. And I'm really finding myself kind of gravitating towards that. And just the local news, like what's happening in your community. Everybody's so global, everything is so gentrified.
Yeah.
But I think people really want to know what's happening on Main Street and how long that construction is going to be going on, right? And the value of that. So I'm not sure how it's going to really, pan out, but that's kind of where I'm heading. In addition
Interesting. I
to,
like that.
thank
Haven't
you.
heard that yet.
You
Yeah.
haven't?
No, I haven't. And that could also manifest in many different ways. So I love where you're
Yes.
heading. Thank you for that. So Cristan, please tell our listeners where they can find you online and also where they can find the films that we have been talking about.
Well, the other F word I think you can get on Amazon. The two Play It Forward, the story of Tony Gonzalez and his brother Chris. And that one you can get on Showtime. And Happiness, the science of happiness through the lens of football, which we did with Pete Berg, that's on HBO. And Hulu, Tiny Shoulders, Rethinking Barbie, you can get on Hulu.
Thank you. And also for you,
For me,
Instagram, IMDb.
I am on IMDb, thank you. And I'm on LinkedIn and I'm on Instagram as Cristan4. It's private, but if you give me a little hi.
Folks, if you want to follow Cristan, follow her there. Folks, everything is going to be in the show notes. So no worries about that. And Cristan Crocker, what a fabulous conversation. So I learned so much today. I cannot wait to see the film about Ruth Handler that you're working on. And this has just been delightful. So I want to thank you for your mom wisdom and your insights, and just, it's been a wonderful conversation.
Sharon, I loved it and enjoyed it. And again, thank you for focusing on the moms. I think it's just brilliant.
Before I sign off, a quick favor. Following the Mom to More pod means you'll never miss an episode, and it really helps the show to grow. And if you'd be willing to leave a 5-star rating and review and share an episode with another mom, I'd be super grateful and appreciate your support.